Did you know that the majority of the problems in your relationship are due to your childhood upbringing? In fact, that most of the reason that people have hard relationships is because they're bringing all this trauma from their childhood to the table, and none of it has been reprogrammed into healthy, mature adult ways. And so what ends up happening is you just react to things. It's something that you do because you feel scared. Some way you're feeling fearful and you just react. So these can come in several different ways. So today we're going to dive deep in childhood trauma and how to break these patterns. We're going to first identify them, then we're going to talk about how to break them. My name is Ed Baxter, and I help guys in betrayal situations. I've coached thousands of men, tens of thousands of men who come through my doors in one form or another. I've had over 3,000 guys come through the Betrayed to Badass program. And that's what we do. We'll get you to that place where you make the right decision for you and your children. So today we're going to dive deep into these childhood traumas, and first we're going to talk about what they are, and two, we're going to talk about how to break them and how you can move forward so that you can have effortless relationships. Make no mistake, if you've dealt with all of your childhood traumas and your woman has also dealt with hers, you have an effortless relationship. Relationships are easy. They're really easy with people who are higher consciousness because they have worked very hard on themselves, and they don't look for their partner to save them. They don't look for their partner to make them validated. They don't look for their partner to make them feel special. And so I don't pull on my wife in these type of ways. So my wife doesn't feel repulsed by me, and she does not pull on me in these ways, so she doesn't drain me. In fact, when we're together, we recharge and energize because, well, we're not pulling on each other in ineffective and unhealthy ways. When we come together, we end up charging each other up. And I want this for you. And this is why I made this video, so that you can have this as well. So you can have a traumatic event and not be traumatized. In fact, you can have a normal event and it can traumatize the hell out of you. So childhood trauma doesn't necessarily have to be some extreme example of abuse or beating or neglect. It could just be a parent who's just inconsistently there for you. It could be a situation where you had a lot of chaos in the home and everybody's just yelling at each other. It could be this place where your parents loved you so much they would not let you go, and you became overly reliant on them, and the mom enmeshes herself emotionally with you. In fact, she might enmesh so hard with you that you feel guilty anytime you don't want to give mom attention. And so these things that happen in your childhood ends up being some sort of a traumatic event for you because of how you decided to perceive it and how you decided to modify yourself so that you could survive moving forward. And as a small child, you don't know how to do this effectively. You don't have all these good strategies. So what ends up happening, you default into something that actually works. And so because it works, you stop searching for something better. Because if it works, then why would you search for something better? Kind of like how evolution is. It doesn't find the most optimal solution. It just finds the one that works in the environment based on the stimuluses around it. And so here are a few different situations that you might find yourself. So avoidance. You might have had a lot of conflict around you as a kid, and so you just didn't want to deal with conflict anymore, so you just avoided all conflict altogether. Or maybe because of all the conflict, you just completely avoided intimacy because you didn't feel that anybody actually really cared about you that much, not deep down. And so this ends up becoming this life of isolation. You're like, I've only relied on myself because I can only rely on myself, and that's all that I know to be true. And so a lot of top performing guys fall into this category of avoidant. A lot of men do because they're taught that you have to suck it up. Nobody's coming to save you. You have to work hard. You have to grind. You have to do it. And so they don't really look for support from other people. In fact, they may even look at other guys as competition. And so you go to this place where you're just avoidant of one, conflict, and two, you're avoidant of really being open and being communicative with your partner or be able to be vulnerable. And so this avoidant behavior makes you come off as cold. It makes you seem callous. When in fact you have a lot going on, but you don't want to expose it, because if you exposed it, it means that it wouldn't be accepted. And so you just bury it and keep it all in under this guise of, well, nobody cares anyway. Or if you had really inconsistent love from your parents, you might have this massive fear of abandonment. Maybe like your father died or your mother died, and you're like, well, somebody could leave me at any point in time. And so there's this tendency to just latch on. And so you'll have this game of abandonment coming up where you're feeling like this all the time. One minute you feel safe, but then the next minute you feel like you're going to be abandoned. And so this will put you in this place of, I can love like crazy on this person, but then as soon as I feel something triggers me to feel like they don't really care about me, I'll create a story in my head that they don't really care about me, that they don't really know, that they just here for whatever reason, and then you lash out. And you'll be like, screw you, I don't need you. And you have this hot and cold behavior. Borderline personality disorder usually demonstrates this quite heavily. But usually this also happens with an anxious attachment type. That one there especially has a lot of approval-seeking behavior. All of these can lead to approval-seeking behavior because I have to perform to get love. In other words, when I was a child, I had to be a good boy. I had to be what mom wanted. Because if I didn't, mom would lash out, or she would withhold affection, or she would withhold attention. And so a lot of times parents will manipulate their children in order to get them into compliance, because it's easier to use manipulation to get the child to comply than it is to just sit down with them, talk about the consequences, and go through that long process of actually training them properly on how to be proper human beings in a civilized society. And so it's easier for the mom to just guilt the child or shame them, or just play cold shoulder until the child finally complies, or the dad will do the same type of a thing. And so you end up being in a situation where these kids they become traumatized in these events, and then they carry this forward in their relationships. And so in your relationship, it becomes this microcosm of how it was with your parents. So if you had a terrible relationship with your mom, you're going to start dating a woman that was kind of like your mom in some ways, so that something in your soul, something in your psychology is saying that something is wrong and it needs to be resolved. So we're going to attract what we find familiar about ourselves, which also simultaneously gives us the opportunity to start to resolve that from within ourselves. And so one of the common misconceptions that people have in dating is they date a person thinking that they're a lifelong partner when really they're just a seasonal partner. And so recognizing that this person is just in your life to handle this kind of a trauma. And then once you figured out that trauma, you realize that you weren't that compatible with each other outside of that trauma, and then you should probably break up with that person and move on to somebody better. Most people don't want to think about it that way, that partners oftentimes are just seasonal instead of lifelong partners, and typically the lifelong partner is the one who has already handled their traumas. After you have already handled your traumas, now you're actually in a position to have an adult relationship. But when these traumas happen, you can't really have an adult relationship because you're having a child relationship. You're having a relationship from your inner child. And that's the thing that overshadows everything. It's the thing that causes the fights. It's the things that cause the arguments. It's the things that causes you to be jealous and fearful and envious and worried about what your woman's doing and keeping you from playing big in life and keeping you small and keeping you limiting in your belief systems and the things that create wealth and make you be a good father. And what ends up happening is these traumas create these emotional triggers. And so something will be an emotional trigger, and this is where the problems start. Like your wife will say something, and it'll remind you subconsciously of something that your mom did, but you won't remember the actual memory. You just know that when your wife says something, you start to get anxious, or you start to get angry, or you start to get fearful. And in this place of fear, you start to react. Because you're like, oh crap, this is going to happen. This happened every time, but you don't really understand that that's what happened. You don't really know why because you haven't dug into your own psychology and really done the deep work to unravel that. And so then you react to your partner. Let's say she texts a guy and you're like, uh-oh, she must be texting another guy. And you're like, well, how do you know she's texting another guy? She's just got her phone and she just texted somebody. You don't know who she's texting. And then you look at her phone, you find out she's just texting her girlfriend. It's not a big deal. But the problem is that, say, you had a mom who cheated on your dad constantly. So from your perspective, this is what women do. There's always another guy on the hook. There's always another guy they're going to jump onto whenever they're unhappy. Whenever she's not getting her needs met, she goes and jumps onto some other guy. And so you just seeing your wife texting her girlfriend, it's not that big a deal. But to you, it's like that means it equates to your wife is cheating on you. And you go into all this entire extreme, and then you have this fear of abandonment kick in. And then you start questioning what she's doing with her phone. Like, hey, who are you texting? What are you doing? And you start accusing her of things. And then she's like, what? Back off, dude. Like, I can't have friends. I can't talk to people. Can't I have some privacy? And you're like, well, I just know you're doing it. And then you go down this accusatory spiral. And then she gets all like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then maybe she has avoidance because her dad was never around. Or her dad was just hammering her all the time, so she learned to stay away from conflict. She's like, look, I don't know what's going on. Just leave me alone. And she'll shut down. And so then you have you in your anxious style with your fear of abandonment kicking in, and then her avoidant kicks in, and then you don't hear from her for 3 days because she's like, I don't want to have this conflict with him. I'm just going to go over here. Now you're thinking, oh, she is with another guy now. And she's not with another guy. She's just trying to avoid the conflict from you, and it was just too intense for her, and she just needed some space. And then you're like, yeah, I knew she was cheating on me. I knew she didn't really like me. I knew she was. Did you blow up her fucking phone with 50,000 texts accusing her of all kinds of stuff? And then she tells you, yeah, I don't want to be with you anymore. And you're like, I knew it. I knew there's somebody else. And then you stalk her and keep up with her and all this other crazy stuff what ends up happening in your mind. It will spin a relationship out. And that's just one example of like 1,000 different kinds of scenarios that could play out based on the person's traumas. It could be from her. She could do something where she feels like you're going to abandon her. So maybe you're just sitting next to her in church and then you just cross your legs over to one side. She goes, I felt like you abandoned me. Like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, you crossed your legs because you turned your body away from me because you don't really want to be here with me. And then she just keep laying there. There's probably another woman, isn't there? There's probably something. Any kind of sign that I just know you're going to leave me. And so then she'll start sniping at you. She's like, well, you didn't want to see my parents anyway because you don't really want to be with me. And I knew you were going to cancel at the last minute. And she just says all this stuff. And you're like, what the hell's going on? Why am I getting so much flack here? And it's just her trauma coming up. And it's just a scenario that you're having to deal with. And then you can't hit it with strength. No, you can't do that. Don't talk to me this way. Then she's like, yeah, he doesn't. And from her perspective, you just don't care. Once again, you're just shutting her down. And so then the guy's like, well, I don't know how to talk to her to get her to open up and lead her back into her heart. I have no idea how to do that. And that's why we created the soul seducer system, so that you could reach right into her soul and talk to that greater person within. Not the one that's being triggered all the time, but the person underneath that's better than all the triggers, the mature person underneath, the one that knows that all this is bullshit, the one that knows that you love her, the one that knows that you're safe. But also, we show you how to be that guy that's absolutely fucking rock solid and safe. That's the whole point of it. And so we realize that men and women constantly are living from their traumas, and it turns into these situations where they cannot get along with each other. And if they could just handle their traumas, they could get along a lot better, and they could actually be with somebody that was highly compatible with them. Oftentimes the traumas get in the way, and they get with somebody that they're not even that compatible with just because they don't want to feel alone. You can't even really discern if we're with a healthy partner, that's someone that matches us well, because we're still being driven by our traumas. Through the soul seducer system, we've been able to demonstrate and show guys how to actually calm the fuck down, how to be super emotionally resilient, how to navigate and definitely maneuver the conversation so that we can actually talk to the person inside instead of it turning into a three-ring shit show of manipulation and fighting. And then from this place, he learns to create his own value for himself. And from this place of value, he learns how to create a seductive life. Seductive for who? For himself. So he can have it all in this life. So he can have money. So he can have a good relationship with God. So he can have a great relationship with himself and be a great father. And also to be what his woman needs, and so that he can get his sexual and relationship needs met. And on top of that, once he understands how to create this seductive life, he now can play the bigger game of soulmate seduction, where he can create soulmates with the right person who's high compatibility with him, and how to find that person and create the garden so that she can settle down emotionally. Because what I found is that people who are calm, cool, and collected and have dealt with their own traumas can now see within the other person what's going on with their traumas. And now there's an opportunity to create a garden for them to thrive and to settle down their own traumas and actually heal in the relationship without being a savior and trying to save her from herself. Because as a man, you shouldn't do that. You should just hold the line on that one. And so the Soul Seducer program is for men who want to do that. For men who want to either reclaim their marriage, or maybe he cheated on his wife, or maybe there's just a bit of disconnect, or maybe it's been 30 years and she's just like, I don't want to take care of people anymore. I can't even be the one to fall apart. I've always had to take care of everybody else. And the guys have been an unhinged maniac for years, and angry and upset and frustrated, trying to run a business and run a family. It's a lot. It's a lot for people, and they're just floundering. They don't know how to do it. And so that's why we created the Soul Seducer system. So how do you heal this pain? Like, how do you heal it? Well, the first step is awareness. You have to be first aware of what's going on within you. It doesn't matter if you're aware of what's going on within her. If you're not aware of what's going on within you, you're not going to be able to reach her at all. And so if you can't be aware, like just being able to notice it in real time, like how do you stop a habit? Like, how do you stop doing something? Like, if you're biting your fingernails, how do you stop biting your fingernails? Well, you have to, oh, I'm doing it, and stop. But the first thing is you have to be aware that it's happening. And so being aware, like, of your triggers is critical. The second part is boundaries. So when your partner starts to pull on you with this, you have to start setting clear and solid boundaries, ones that have teeth. It's not a boundary if you just say, hey, don't do that. That's not a boundary. That's a statement. That's a request. The request doesn't have to be honored. Now, if there's a boundary, it has teeth behind it, right? Kids, go to bed. That's just a request. Kids, please go to bed. And then you find out you're having to yell at your kids and leveraging fear to get them to go to bed, and that is not a proper boundary. It's being a tyrant. You can say, kids, go to bed, or tomorrow you will lose out on all your screen time. Boom, they are in bed. There's a consequence for not going to bed. And so in your relationship, you have to have these consequences for these actions. There has to be a consequence for, or the other person will not take you seriously, and they will not actually change. And you also have to have these boundaries for yourself. You have to become intolerant of the behavior that you're doing. You have to look at the fact that your behavior is causing you suffering, and you have to look at the suffering as worse than the pain of transformation. When you see that the suffering is worse than the pain of transformation, then you'll go towards the path of release resistance, which is the transformation, which is handling the problem. And you have to learn to emotionally regulate yourself. The problem is that most people with these traumas have no emotional regulation. So something will happen, it'll spike a trauma, it'll spike a fear and anxiety, and then they'll just, because they can't regulate it. They can't depersonalize and say, oh, this is just an experience that's happening in conscious awareness, and I could just sit with it and watch it and observe it and get curious about it and see what's coming up and understand what it is and unpack it. No, they just react. because they haven't learned to emotionally regulate themselves. It's the first thing we teach guys in Soul Seducer, is how to emotionally regulate yourself. Because once you can regulate yourself, now you're in this position you can actually be aware of it. And if you can be aware of it, that means you can change it. And then when you change it, you can set a boundary on yourself on it. And so emotional regulation is absolutely critical. And the last one is you have to invest in your growth. Growth cannot be just something you think about. You can't mentally masturbate about personal growth. Growth means you're going to have to invest something. You're going to have to invest time. You're going to have to invest emotional energy. You're going to have to invest resources. You're going to have to invest cash a lot of the time. And so you want to leverage investment in yourself. If you have to take a course, take a course. If you have to join Soul Seducer, join Soul Seducer. If you have to go to the gym, go to the gym. If you have to get a new job, get a new job. You have to invest in yourself. If you want to be more in control, you're probably going to have to spend some time working on your emotional state. Do some meditation, read some books. If you want to be emotionally regulated, if you want to be an absolute savage in the game of being able to pivot your relationship, even in the worst argument, you're going to have to learn about manipulation. You're going to have to invest time, energy, and resources in order to do that. Here's a good exercise. Try this. Look at your situation now. If you're watching this video, I'm going to assume that there's something in your relationship portion of your life that's not going well. Imagine it being exactly the same as it is now, or most likely worse 1 year from now. January 2026, you're like, it's worse than it is now. Fuck, that sucks, right? Now imagine your best case scenario, the thing that you ultimately want at the end of 2026. Cool. Lock that in memory. Now go back and look at the worst case scenario, which is you didn't do any kind of growth. In fact, it got worse. Kind of makes you want to work, doesn't it? Kind of makes you want to do the thing. And you can use that simple trick for anything. Just look at what you want, and then look at what happens. The cost of not doing that means staying the same or getting worse. In fact, you will get worse. Once you have set the goal and you decide not to do it, or you could not make yourself do it, it gets worse. Because now you've lost faith in yourself. Now you have a whole year of regret. And 1 year of regret leads to a lifetime of regret. So brother, I hope this video was helpful for you. In fact, I'm going to keep doing these videos because I know you need it. And I care about you deeply. And this is why I do this work. This is why I build the courses. This is why I do coaching. This is why I have a community, because this is my desire. This is what I do. This is what I'm built for. I've been built for it, and I've been given lethal weapons to be the best in the business. And brother, I cannot wait to see you. I would love to see you in person. I'd love to get to meet you in the Soul Seducer program. And if you like this video, tell me about it. Comment about it. Tell me what you want to see. I would love to see comments down below telling me what kind of videos you need help with. Like, what's your situation? And I might make a video just for you. Anyways, brother, I love you, and I'll see you in the next video.